And really what you need to do to actually personalize this journey is pull markers through from that information into the Dynamics marketing suite and hold that information to allow us to personalize the journeys each individual goes on. Now that data is quite critical to that process, because those are the markers that allow you to decide what is personalized and what cannot be personalized. And what we find is when we're talking to people, often we're trying to bring too much data in rather than actually looking at the journeys and considering the journeys and what would the trigger points be and what would the information that would tailor the message be, and bringing that across. So for example, from a curriculum perspective, the only thing we might actually be interested in is what courses have they put on as their choices. From a student information system, we might be interested in where's their application at, for example, what stage is the application at. At library, we might be interested in sort of library books and what themes of books and sorts of things that they're actually taken out there, so you can send tailored messages, and so on and so on. Now that information gets pulled into contact segmentation data. We have a number of tools: segments, journeys, emails, forms. There's a lot more in that, but these are some of the main things I wanted to talk about today, which are sat in now, which then can leverage that data. But at the attract process, we're starting to bring people in for the first time. You know, we're just starting to make that initial contact. You know, people are contacting us to find out about prospectuses. They're starting to contact us to say, when's your next open day? You know, those sorts of things are actually going on. And really what you've got there is that prospective students piece, and you need to start capturing data in that student life cycle from the prospective student piece to allow you to do effective attraction marketing or personalized marketing. So just stepping on then, let's talk about personalization tools, if you like, that we will use as part of this process. So because we're dealing with the attraction phase and we haven't necessarily yet got a contact record, you know, people might be coming to us, or we might be doing all sorts of things like social marketing or all other things, and driving them, for example, to a web form or a landing page somewhere where we're going to start to capture some details. And that might be, you know, here's a prospectus request, here's a course inquiry form, here's something about a summer school we're running, and you know, expression of interest, for example. So those web forms we can set up and configure to capture base information. So typically first name, last name, email address, for example, but also you could start capturing additional information. So right from the start, you might say, and what school are you interested in going to? Which college are you going to? What subject are you interested in? At a high level, it might be, I'm interested in science, I'm interested in art, I'm interested in languages. You know, you could start capturing that sort of information very early on. Then once we've got our contact record, that's where we can actually start supporting that dynamic data. So we can have placeholders in there to say, okay, here's a specific course interest or a school of interest, for example, and we can expand that out. And it could be, and actually what we've started doing is capture the other things that they're interested in. So do they like to read? Do they like music? Are they into heavy metal? Are they into sports and football and rugby, or rowing or squash, or whatever it happens to be, and capturing that information. And what that dynamic information allows us to do is drive this information segments and subscriptions, which in turn will drive the customer journeys. And I'm going to go through all of these as we basically go through our little presentation this morning. But we're ending here on customer journeys, and customer journeys is really a way of putting together a structured process that somebody on a personalized journey can actually follow. Okay, so it all starts with journeys. So I've got 3 journeys lined up just to give you a flavour. The first is, well, let's request a prospectus. The second is just a nurture journey on a particular stream. So say somebody's expressed an interest in something to do with science or physical science. And then journey 3 is, well, how might we use the journeys and the personalisation things around managing an open day, for example. Okay, so I'm going to stop my slides. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to slide this over onto here. Okay. So what I've just brought across onto the screen then is the Dynamics marketing module. As part of this module, basically, we have multiple features to do with marketing. I'm not going to go and talk about all of these features today. I simply haven't got time, but we're going to start by having a look at some of these journeys and see how personalization can be built around those journeys. So let's start by looking at the prospectus request journey, as we said. So here I've got a relatively simple journey. This is basically being driven by somebody actually requesting a prospectus. So there's a web form at the back end of this, which is published, and that web form basically allows somebody to submit details such as first name, last name, and so on. And that information comes into the system and triggers basically this process. Okay, so the first thing we're doing, something quite standard, we're actually going to send out a prospectus request. Thank you thank you for either downloading the prospectus or, for example, if they've requested a hard copy, for requesting a copy. And I'm just going to click on there, and over here I can actually see the email. Now I'm going to blow that up a bit bigger for you guys. So here I've got an email, and the header section of this is actually built so that it will personalize based around what interest that individual is actually expressing. So, for example, if they haven't expressed a particular school, they'll just get a standard header logo. If they're interested in, say, physical sciences, then they'll get the physical sciences logo. If they're interested in arts and humanities, then they'll get the arts and humanities logo, and so on and so on. And again, this is just an example that I've put in to show you guys today. So we're starting to personalize images and headers and banners, and the way in which this actually works is there's content blocks, so you can predefine these content blocks in the background, and what they will do is allow you to actually tailor and personalize content, images, and blocks of text, for example, around a specific individual's interests, subject preferences, and again, whatever that dynamic data is that we define within the system. So there we go. So we've also got down here, dear contact first name. So obviously it's going to insert somebody's first name there. Thank you for the interest, blah, blah, blah. There's some links in there. And obviously we've got things like preferences, etc., to subscribe and unsubscribe. And I'll come back to talking about the preferences in a moment. If I just scroll that back up again. If I just go into here for a second, I can see that there's some really basic information we can hold, but I can also have insight information. And again, I'll come back to that in a moment. I'm just going to edit that quickly, just to show you something. So here, if I go into editing, I can go and actually preview that, and I can test this and see what it looks like. So if I go into preview, and we say, for example, let's say it's Daisy Jones, it'll just show me exactly what it looks like against a given individual. So it's really easy to just to test that. Now Daisy, I know, is set up as an expression of interest against arts, and I can see there that basically it's just changed that. It's just given me the right logo, so it's starting to tailor it as if it's coming from that particular school. And here I can see, obviously it's putting in Daisy. Very, very simple and basic stuff, but it's being driven by that dynamics data piece in the background. Okay, and then what we can do basically is we can set timers and things like that. So after a period of time, we say wait for 7 days. We can then send another email and say, actually, let's go and check now, make sure that Daisy's received that prospectus, and if there's anything else we can help her with. So again, here, this is where we can actually add and improve the experience. So now what we want to do is get some information back from Daisy, so we can confirm that she's actually got and read the prospectus, and we can record that information. So here we can empower the emails with some simple buttons. So yes I have it, no I've not had it yet, and based on the response that Daisy will give us at that point, we can say, right, when it's clicked, or if it's clicked, say yes we've got it. We're running just a little workflow process, which is just a simple thing to say, go to Daisy's record and put a date in to say when she confirmed she got the prospectus. If she hasn't received it, it might be that we've got a task to go and send her a hard copy prospectus, which is what I've just put in here as an example of the sorts of thing that you can do. So there we go. Right from the get-go, when we're in the attraction process, we're looking to start to gather information about the individual and actually use that to empower their personalization process. So let me just drop back in again and look at the next one then. So I'm now going to talk about the attraction science niche journey. So again, I put a relatively simple process in this. Obviously, this can be pretty well unlimited in terms of how many different messages you want to send over a period of time. And it is actually worth mentioning that you can have what we call swim lanes. So you can have different versions of this running side by side, depending on how the initial selection criteria is done with the segmentation. This one basically is using the prospectus has been received, and also they're in a science stream. So basically, Daisy will have ticked saying, yes, my prospectus has been received, and we've marked that, but she wouldn't appear on this one because this is a science stream, and Daisy was expressing an interest in arts. So where we've got people going into science, it might be different science streams, so it might be chemistry, biology, or whatever it happens to be, physics, for example. Numerous different ones, and then we can decide specifically with a segment exactly what constitutes this particular science stream. Okay, so they're automatically added onto that when they identify they're interested in science and they've received the prospectus in this point. That's a good example of like a compound segment where we're bringing a couple of rules together. We wait for a period of time, and then we basically just go into a nurture process. So again, we're starting to send emails out. So this time we've got more content and again using content blocks, but again tailored around that particular journey. So if we go and just have a look at the email for a second. So this time, again, I'm inserting somebody's name, a little bit of text, and then I basically want to decide what I want to show them. So if it's school physical sciences, I want to show them what's on and talk about the summer school, for example. Or the physics summer school. I might want to put some links into to key events in physics news at the moment. You know, just as a hook. If they're interested in chemistry, well, actually, it's still part of the School of Physical Sciences, but there's different messaging that's going on automatically at the bottom of this. And I'm building this in one email, just with some really simple rules that allow me to decide exactly how that works. So again, I'm just going to pop into the editor for a second and we'll go and preview that. Okay, and let's put Andrew in. And Andrew basically is interested in physics. There we go. So we're previewing that, and it's talking about the physics summer school and physics news with links out to news articles elsewhere, for example, usual unsubscribe, etc. If I put Tracy in there, rerun that for a second. There we go, and I can see now it's still a physical science, but it's basically what's on it around chemistry and talking about other chemistry events, basically, which have been going on. So again, personalizing the messages and personalizing the news stories that those individuals are actually getting to see as part of that process. Now, I haven't enabled this one, so this is still very much draft. But what you can do is I can carry on and I can say, right, okay, I'm gonna wait for a period of time again. I can say, right, let's wait for another, say, 14 days. Or whatever your particular thing happens to be, or schedule it, etc. And then I can go in and I can add the next email event, whatever it is, as part of that process. And I've got a number of choices there, obviously, so I can put if and then queries in. So again, if I've got things like links and buttons which they might click within the email, I can say if they click this particular item, then I want you to do something differently and build that as part of that process. Or I could just split. So I can say at this point, I want to take 50-50, half the respondents who get to this point are going to take one way, half they're going to take the other way. And obviously there's various other things I can do. So I can go off the back of it and I can create items, or for example schedule other things. So you might get to a certain point and you say, actually it's worthy of a phone call from our student services team or something like that. You can do that and you can drive all of those things and really personalize that journey for that individual, but obviously take care of your back office processes as part of that process. Okay, I'm going to go to the third one, and this was basically to talk about an open day. Now, what I've done with the open day is I've actually made this one live. So this has been running. It sent out a bunch of emails, about 46 emails yesterday, and consequently you can see more information that's going on here because this one is actually running. So the first email. So if we just have a quick look at that, I'll just drop into it again so you can see what we've done. So really, this is basically saying, right, we've got an open day coming up, sending it to the relevant person. Really simple. I'm not trying to do a really tailored personal message here. It's more of an advert type email about the day. If you wanted to make that more personalized, obviously you can, because that's just a case of tailoring that particular email. Okay, so that went out. We then waited for a period of time. Now I only waited for 1 hour because I was testing it and I wanted it to work for you guys today. But obviously you might wait for say a week and then check if people have been registered or not, basically, and see what happens. So here we've got a sort of through to the registration, and we can see exactly what happens. But I want to know exactly what's happening all the way through this process, and that's what all these little indicators are telling me. So if I go back to this email for a second and just show you these sorts of things, I can see volumes and KPIs. So for example, my delivery KPIs. Now this test data, so the majority of emails in here are basically rubbish emails, deliberately so, because we don't want to be sending loads and loads out when we're actually doing presentations. But one of them it was a decent email, which is one of my own personal email addresses, so I can see it's delivered one. So my success rate basically is only 2.2% out of all of those sent. But I can see the fails, the soft bounces, the hard bounces, and I can go and analyze that and see what else is going on. I can actually jump into the details from there, and this starts showing me all of the specs in terms of how many were delivered, how many opens, how many clicks do we get, what hard bounces, soft bounces, how many were unopened forwards, etc., etc. And as I go down, you can see I've got various different ways of analyzing, including what's actually being clicked, what's been looked at from each of the items. I can see there that the 2 clicks that I did were right in the center of the screen, and I can split that down to different items. So yeah, I can look at heat maps, for example. So here I've got heat maps in. Yeah, people have clicked on the browser, but the main thing is basically people have been clicking here to actually sign up for that particular event, and obviously where you've got lots of links and lots of options for people, you can start to see exactly what it is. Now, based on what people are doing and what people are clicking, again, we're capturing that data against that contact record, so we can drive other user personalization experiences based on that additional enriched data that we're getting as we're going through this process. Okay, so what's actually happened here is the one that was delivered, I actually clicked, I went through and I registered for the event. So I've gone through to here to the event. Basically, there's a couple more stages that are going on. So here, for example, if people haven't clicked, we just send a reminder email, and then we're just ending the process. We're only sending one reminder. You might want to send obviously half a dozen reminders, entirely up to you. Here, if they've cancelled for whatever reason before the event, we just send them a regret email, which basically says, look, sorry that you've cancelled, but here's details of our next open day. Please, by all means, come to us. Now, again, what you do there is entirely up to you. It might be you want to send them to another list that you've got, which is basically saying, add them to the list about who we want to email for the next open day, or you might want to automate it as part of that process and already have that information in the system so people can click through and register for your next event. So again, lots and lots going on. Okay, so I'm just going to pause there for a second before I go into some of the tools and look at some of the details behind that. So have we got any questions in yet, or is there anybody want to raise their hand and ask a question now?
Hi, David. There's a few questions in the chat. I've just been responding to.
Okay. Just having a look. Okay. Ian, so can you include other data in your analysis that could provide insight to personalization, other interactions, social chat, etc.? Yeah, I think you've answered that by the looks of it. But also, there's we have like omni-channel tools as well available, so which include things like chatbots and AI. So you can automate those processes and still capture that data, including things like opening surveys, closing surveys on chats, and bring that data into the process. I think the key to this is actually thinking through all of the journeys and planning appropriately. The people that do that will be very, very successful in how they use this, but very much so we can bring data in from other areas. Are these emails built directly in Dynamics? Yes, so the templates I've actually built out in Dynamics. Dynamics has its own template set. It's worth mentioning when I will show an email shortly that you can actually design the emails in HTML. You don't have to use the designer, and any of the images that you're using, you don't have to upload to Dynamics if they're already publicly available and hosted somewhere. You can just reference the URL as part of that process. Okay, I think that's all the questions. Anybody got anything else? Cool. Okay. Right. Let me just move that for a second. Okay, so I'm going to show you a few features of this of the system now, just to show how that personalization can be built using the data and some of the tools in the background. So the first thing is really, how do you empower prospective students? So how do you start to allow them to give you the information that you need to personalize the journey? Well, that starts with what we call subscription lists, and subscription lists within Dynamics allow you really to tailor a list of subjects that somebody might be interested in, and that might be, for example, courses that they're interested in. It might be their own personal interests, and again, it really depends on what your definition of personalization is and how you want to personalize those journeys. So a good example might be, I'm signing up for something to do with science because that's what I'm interested in from a course perspective, but I'm really keen on sport. I like my athletics, for example. And that basically could be captured through a subscription list by actually publishing those sorts of bits of information on the web forms as they're filling web forms in. And what we have is a way of actually surfacing preferences and allowing them to actually do complete that sort of information. Then we get to step 2, which is holding the right data about the contact. So what we basically have is obviously what you'd expect the standard contact demographic type information to be, but it's also the additional segmentation data, or segmentation fields is what we tend to call it. And that's basically pulling information in from the multiple sources. So some of that segmentation information will be coming from subscription lists and the information being provided by the individual. But as they go through that journey and move on through that student journey, other bits of information might be pulled from elsewhere. So, for example, if they've made an application, then you could augment that information with information about the application status, for example. So, you know, they might have said that they're interested in arts and humanities as a school, but when you get the application through, actually their first choice in terms of courses is art history, or what it happens to be. So that information really is just deciding exactly what would the trigger points, what would be the key bits of data that you need to identify, which would impact that personalization journey. Then we get to step 3, which is really building flexible segmentation rules. So all of those customer journeys start with what we call a segment, and that's basically a list of individuals who are basically selected based on the rules that we tell the system. So it might be, you know, they're a prospective student and they've highlighted and interested in the School of Arts, or they're a prospective student and they're interested in a particular course, or a particular course, and they like athletics as a hobby, for example. And that's about really selecting the right people to push them onto the personalisation journey. But what we don't want it to be is too restrictive, and you have to create a personalisation journey for every single segment that you might create. Obviously, there could be a huge number of different variations of segments as a result. So step 4 basically is to personalize the emails as well, and that's where we can tailor imaging, wording, etc. on the email, as I showed you before, where I was saying actually this one is handling the arts and the sciences and so on, and I've tailored that as part of that process, so you can actually use the same email and the same content blocks basically repeated on your emails. But it would just tailor automatically by looking at the individuals and some of the information on each individual record and sending them a relevant tailored email as a result. So let's jump back into the software. So let's start by talking about segments. And what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to start about subscription. Sorry. What I'm going to do, I'm going to drop down about the preferences page. So here I've got a prospective student subscriptions page set up. We can have a quick look at this. Okay, so there we go. So if somebody clicks that link at the bottom about my preferences and subscribe, for example, they actually get this sort of form available to them. So again, we're capturing the key information. I've made 3 bits of information mandatory on this one: first name, last name, and email. But they can give us the mobile phone if they want. They can give us a salutation if they want. And again, that's down to your own policies and exactly how you want to operate that within your institutions. As we come down here, we can see we've got a question bank. It'll help us ensure you get the right information by completing the list below. So this is really around courses, and that's what I've set up here. So languages, business, finance, science, politics, blah, blah, blah. And what I'm trying to do is just get to maybe the right school and the right sort of information at this point. I can make that list more extensive. I could have another list underneath it, which is tell us your interests. I could have another list underneath basically saying what part of the world are you coming from. Again, what you put on that list is entirely down to yourselves, and it is sometimes worth basically adding to that list as they go through the journey, so you're getting a little bit of additional information as you go. Obviously, we have to offer the unsubscribe piece. It's mandatory and a requirement. And then at the end here, basically, we've just got some validation on there, as you would admit before they can submit. So these things here, this is what we call subscriptions. And if I just scroll back up here and go to subscription lists, you'll see I've got basically a list of items, and all I've got to do is create them as a subscription item, and they'll be added to this. Now this effectively operates as a marketing list. So against any of these, if I go in and have a look, so if we go and have a look at science, for example, there we go. I can see I've got Paul in against science, and I haven't got many in there, unfortunately. But again, if I go into arts, and we see what members we've got in there, because I haven't got anybody in there at the moment. But these lists will, based on what people are saying, on what boxes they're ticking on that form, will allow people to go into these lists. You can also give people the ability that they can actually tick on multiple boxes. So if they're in a sort of indecisions and they're trying to decide between, well, I'm not sure if I want to do business and finance or politics or something like that, and they're looking at all options at the moment, they can just tick 2 boxes, and you can actually send them down 2 separate journeys and give them information on both, if that was your preference. So what basically happens there is that information is controlled, and the personalization is actually put into the individual's hands. They're empowered to actually make those decisions themselves, but that allows you to much more effectively tailor the results for them as a result of that. Now, the next thing, if we just drop up to contacts and have a look at a contact record, let's just have a look at, say, all contacts, and we'll grab Daisy, as we talked about her journey before. So here, looking at Daisy Daisy in her journey. She's currently marked as a potential student, for example. She's not a student, not an alumni. She hasn't specified an academic year at all at any point. She has expressed an interest in School of Arts and art history, which we've captured. I can see that she's requested a prospectus. We haven't had a confirmation from her at all that she's basically actually received that prospectus. And again, like I said, all the demographic data is there. This data can be built out for each of your local tailored scenarios based on the integration piece and how you want to bring that information across. If I go here and we have a look at further demographic and marketing data. So here I can see, for example, what are we allowing for Daisy? What are Daisy's contact preferences? Obviously, from a GDPR perspective, what level of consent has been given, and all of that information again can be captured as part of that journey as people go through that journey. So then segments. Let's have a quick look at segments. Okay, so here, for example, we can see a number of different segments. So, for example, I can see people listed as alumni. I can see prospective students live list. I can see people who are interested in art or science, etc. I can see people who've received a prospectus in the science stream, and that's the one I use for one of the triggers before, if they've requested a prospectus, and so on. So let's just have a look at a couple of those just to see what we mean by a segment. So when we're actually creating a segment, we can actually use a natural English language and just ask the data a question. And basically what we're doing is building really simple queries. So here I can see for this one, I'm just saying, look at the contact records and where potential student equals yes. That's the rule for actually adding people to this list. So I can then go to members and it'll refresh basically, and I can see how many members I've actually got in there. So I've got 15 basically as part of that particular list. So the definition is key to this. So then if we go and have a look at something a little bit more complex, so let's say live lists where they've got an art preference. So all we're doing there is we're adding an additional bit of functionality, is just saying, look, if it equals art history, then yes, and again, that's going to select that list of people. Again, I'm just going to add another layer of complexity because you might have obviously multiple courses. So again, it depends on how you want to add that. So still potential student equals yes. And these things here saying, well, the course is, if it's biology, chemistry, or physics, I want to regard them as part of the science stream. And again, you'll have a list of members there as a result. And you can see there I've only got 12 people who actually fulfill out of those prospective students who are have a science biased. And again, I'll just pop one other one just so we can see this. Okay, so here what we're doing basically is just the way in which the system holds the data. We've actually got a lead record which is created off the form. So I'm just checking the prospectus request equals yes, and then the potential student equals yes. So I'm actually again doing just a really simple query. It's not using a query language or anything like that. It's simply basically allowing me to sort of drag and drop and add all of the different elements and attributes that I need to actually filter the data and find the right thing. Now down here, I can look at that as a flow view, which is not very exciting because there's only 2 records. But I could also, if you are into the sort of query language, you can actually look at it and use it as a query tool as well. So it gives you lots of options in terms of how you would do that.
Hi, David. Just to interrupt you there. Again, just looking at the time, there's a few questions that have come in the chat. Would you mind just having a quick look at those and get some of those answered, if that's okay?
Well, I've got about 3 minutes left, so I just want to show
Okay.
the email piece and just talk about a few features of the email editor. I think one of the questions in the start was about email editing, so I had planned just to show that, and then I can drop back to the questions if that's okay.
Okay.
So, okay, so let's have a look at marketing emails. So again, here are the various emails, and I can see lots of things going on. So let's go and have a look at one of those. So this one's actually running at the moment, so I'm just going to stop it. Okay, and then I'm into a full-blown editing mode. There we go. So I'm actually into the editing tool. So again, I'm in the designer at the moment. So this is a traditional sort of drag and drop designer. So if I want to add columns, if I want to add images, etc. Buttons, videos, code. I can do all sorts of bits and pieces with this directly from the tools that I've got here, and that's just a case of dragging and dropping basically that information. So there we go. I've just added a two column section to the bottom there. So that makes it really easy for me to actually configure and drag and drop. If you guys prefer to use HTML, then you've got HTML, and you can use the HTML as actually doing it. Obviously, we can preview, and I showed you a preview before. I just wanted to show you a couple of features on the preview. So firstly, things like you've got a basic preview, and you've got inbox preview. So an inbox preview just tries it in all the different flavors of an inbox, so you can see, is it rendering properly, for example, across all of those different things. You've got some basic ones in the basic preview here. So if I want to see what that looks like in a mobile instead, I can drop it into that mobile environment, and I've got the same sort of view of the data. What we're also doing here is it's doing things like a spam check. So when we check for errors, it will review that. It'll give me if there's a problem with spam. So this one's come through as a low risk, for example. It's fine. It's dealt with that. If it finds something that it considers a risk, it identifies that, and it allows you to obviously drill into that in more detail. We can also do A/B testing. So you can actually create versions of a particular email and build that into your customer journey. And what that enables you to do is say, try these emails up on the first 5% of each one that you're doing. And then basically, whichever is the most success and click-through rate, for example, use that for the continuation of that particular campaign that you're operating. So again, from a personalization perspective, you can see there's actually a lot going on in terms of how we personalize it. So here you can see I'm putting the contact's email address, and these little symbols here are basically how we actually link that information in. So this is where we can add dynamic content. So here I'm looking at the contact, basically email address, and that's what's been added in at that point. And those things we can build in at all sorts of different stages. So if I go into here, just to be awkward, it's not showing it to me. So apologies, but basically that's where we can actually get into the individual code. And it's not, when it says code, it's basically a set of rules saying, look, if this field equals value X, show the next item. And all I'm doing there is I'm actually looking at the school in this instance to allow me to format that quickly and effectively. Okay, let's have a look at questions then. So, okay, our subscription list filterable by year of entry. They can be. Again, what's basically happening is you're creating a record. All we need to do is put a rule in there, basically, that we create against that record a specific year. And there's nothing stopping you creating a new set of subscription lists if you wanted for each year, because obviously that list might vary year on year depending on what it is you guys are offering, and actually what things you might want to capture. Because as you learn and as you market, one of the things happens obviously with marketing, it's very dynamic. There might be a new set of things that you want to capture going into next year. So yes, can be. Very keen to see optimization of a single source of central data. How does the use of Dynamics integrate with an existing online application, data collection solution, and student record system? Okay, well, we've integrated Dynamics with a number of student information systems, including Tribal and Banner. We basically have a tool called the Crimson Integration Framework, which allows us to leverage tools such as Azure Enterprise Service Bus and Logic Apps as a method of actually creating integrations. And then what we generally would do is try and build that information around a contact record within the Dynamics journey. We've done that for a number of clients where we're bringing information to do with, for example, the application process. And in some areas, we've actually implemented the entire application process for things outside of undergraduate, for example. via portals, etc. So we're actually capturing that information and pushing that information across to their student information system. So there are multiple options. It's dependent on the student information system, and it's actually dependent on the other systems that you might have sat around the student information system where you also want to get data from. So really, we would sit down with you and work out what you've got and what the best, most efficient method would be. Following on from Julia's question, can the solution take the output from machine learning solutions and integrate them into the marketing execution? Fantastic question. So there's a number of different things going on here. So one, we can actually take the data we've got and apply machine learning to it, because we can use the Azure tools. Again, because it's Azure, we can actually hold that in if you like, a mirror database in Azure. We can actually extract the information for analysis in third-party machine learning tools, and then obviously push that information back in. I would say there's an ethics consideration about what you're doing there, as we should always be considering with any data. But essentially, from a technology perspective, yes, absolutely. What's the difference between a subscription list and a segment? Okay, so a subscription list really is a set of preferences and personalization that the individual is in control of. So your prospective student can decide, basically, say what courses are they interested in, or what schools are they interested in, or let you know, for example, what things they're interested in. The segment is basically where we gather all of those together and maybe apply additional rules to it. So we might say, okay, we want everybody who's said we've expressed an interest in art, and just to use that first question, with an entry date of 2022, and they're also into classical music, because we're going to do some sort of classical music open day event or something like that. So you're applying those three things together. A segment is basically bringing those multiple rules together, so you end up with one combined list to use in your marketing campaign going forward. Okay. Does that answer everybody's questions? I think I've got them all there. Tom? Ooh, it's very quiet.
Sorry, David, I was on mute. Yeah, no, that's all
okay.
the questions from the chat.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right. So let me just pop back into my slides for a second. So there we go. So just to recap, basically, so building personalization, so empowering those prospective students. So that's things like your subscription list, allowing them to control some of the data that you have, and actually give you up-to-date data and tailor the messaging so it's much more relevant to what it is they're thinking or are considering doing. Holding the right data against the contact. So this is your segment data fields. And again, the question that was asked there about that data coming from the third-party systems, that data journey is really crucial to affecting personalization through the student life cycle. Building flexible segmentation rules. So those segments, there's different segment types. So I've only really talked about dynamic segments, which are the ones which are automatically updating based on changes in the data. You can actually have static segments, which is a list, which is a firm list that you actually add everybody to, if that's what you wish, for example. Okay, and then basically personalizing emails and show that imaging and wording what you can do. And I just want to really finish off just by showing you one last thing really quickly. And that's basically, if we go back to that journey again. So if we talk about this event journey, and this is how the data is growing and how you can change exactly what's going on. So when I've got here, then I've got an individual basically signed up at this point for a particular open day. So this was the spring open day 2021. Okay, and again, if I just drop out and we go and find tail contacts, so Daisy again, and just go and have a look at the data around Daisy. I talked about the academic information, but here I've got, for example, events. So I can go and actually look at the events, and I can see what Daisy's registered to. And if I drill in there, I've got a lot more data around that event. Actually, we hold it on a high level. So here I can see, and she's actually registered for the art session in the morning. So even if Daisy hadn't identified by clicking on the preferences and ticking art, what we've been able to do by the fact that, by publishing an event and having different themed sessions as part of the open day and allowing people to sign up to those sessions, we're able to say, tell us that you're going to come to the open day and tell us what you're specifically interested in seeing just by basically having a session available to it. We've now captured that information as part of Daisy's journey, so we can modify basically all and personalize all of the communications we do with Daisy around that interest in art from that point. And it's really key is about getting that interaction as part of that process and being able to capture that data. Now that's just happened automatically with Daisy going out basically and just registering on the website and saying what it is she specifically wants to see on the day. Okay, and I think I'll end it there.
Just one more
again,
question, David. Sorry, in the chat.
Our subscription lists filterable by year of entry. They are provided in the individual list.
It's a bit further down. Sorry, David. It's Julia. It's building an application.
I thought I'd answered that question before.
Yeah.
That's okay. Yep. Sorry. In building an application transforms, is there electronic digital signature functionality? Yes, we have signature tools which basically will integrate directly with the service. So it depends on your use case, which one we might use. But yes, absolutely. Okay, let's go back to the slides.
Thanks, David. Thanks. Yeah, thanks for going through that, and thanks everyone for joining and attending. I hope you found it useful. I've just put my details on the screen here, so if you did want to sort of reach out to myself, you've got my email address, my mobile number, and obviously on LinkedIn. If you're interested in setting up any sort of further, sort of more intimate one-to-one sessions around some of the stuff that David's gone through today, then by all means, please reach out to me. Also, sorry, Dave, if you go to the next screen. Delay on my side. Yeah, we've also we've got a Crimson University group on LinkedIn, so I would advise you to join that because we are releasing and publishing a lot of content that's relevant to the higher education sector. It's obviously you'll get first information on all of the future HE Hub sessions that we're putting together, but also any other blogs that we put together or we collate from other customers or other people, other leaders in the space. So yeah, if you follow, it's a quick 20 seconds, follow it, and you'll have all the content that we are sort of distributing. Touched on it at the start, but the next HE Hub session, we haven't firmed up a date completely yet, but it will be sort of end of May, potentially early June, and we're going to be discussing how to sort of better utilize intelligent data to support student retention. So it's another one that we'll be sending out information on anyway. But again, that Crimson University page will be the sort of first place we publish this sort of type of information. So yeah, if you give it a follow, that'll be brilliant. And then just lastly, we will be sending out a survey. It's only taken sort of 2 minutes to fill out. It's just about feedback of the session, the content that we're showing, and also if there's anything like I said at the start, if there's any themes that you're passionate about or interested about, or you think would be worth us discussing on this forum, then please put any queries or questions in there. There's also a chance to win a £25 voucher as well, so you could be in for that as well. So yeah, if there's not any other questions, really appreciate everyone's time. And as I say, we'll be sending out the recording of this session anyway. So if you want to pass on to colleagues at a later date, then by all means, please do.